Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and welcome to another episode of CN Unit Analysis, where today we are going to be going through Yunli, right? So for this unit, you guys have probably seen my early access review or from the Creator Experience server, so that's really going through her overall general kits, like codes, team comps and stuff. So today, this is going to be a little bit more of an in-depth explanation, as well as some of the math, advanced tips that you guys can use for your experience, right? So without further ado, let's get into today's content.
Subscribe!
Alright, so the very first thing that players need to kind of take note of is going to be this over here. You can see that her ultimate damage is going to be taking up 76% of the total damage output, 18% from the talent, and 6% from everything else, right? So when it comes to the leveling priority, you definitely want to level up Yunli's ultimate, talent, followed by a skill, followed by a basic. And honestly, this basic, you can just kind of leave it as it is. For this ultimate damage, as you guys have probably seen from playing with Yunli yourselves, a lot of her damage is coming from the Intuit Cow. And without Intuit Cow and the multiple instances of damage and all the buffs, her damage is really lackluster, especially from just talent alone, right? So do take that into consideration. The remaining stuff from the CN, I'm just going to be skipping over through most of the time because we have already covered this in the Creator Experience server. Just going through her talents, how her skill works, ultimate works. So as long as it's too general, I'm not going to be explaining this over here, and I'll just be jumping straight into the more important stuff or things that you guys probably have missed out. Okay, one important thing to note for Yunli's ultimate specifically is that through actual testing, this ultimate will only be released at the end of the next unit turn. It is at the end of the next unit turn, right? So as shown from this graphic representation here, if you were to use two different units over here, so for example Topaz and Huan Huan, right? So if you were to cast Yunli's ultimate during Topaz turn, pop off her ultimate, then you will let go of her actual ultimate after Huan Huan's turn end. But this ultimate will only take place after the end of the very first cycle, at the beginning of the next phase. So do take that into consideration for players who are trying to do a zero cycle or do very fast to Yunli. This ultimate damage will only let go at the end of this unit's turn, and it will be counted as going into the next cycle, right? So very important tip. All right, for the skill and basic, as usual, really not that important because mainly the main benefit of the skill is going to be generating 10 additional energy. But since Yunli already have a lot of energy from getting hit from the talent, then using a skill of basic is quite fluid, right? See if you have enough skill points, right? So that's going to be that. For the technique, nothing much to be said. Just basically cast this. Alright, now going into a more in-depth analysis for Yunli's kit specifically. Now, just now I mentioned her overall damage composition is going to be from the ultimate as well as the skill. Now, this is where her damage composition from follow-up attacks is going to be constituting 94% of her total damage output, and 6% is from her skill, right? And now why this is going to be considered as follow-up attack percentage, while previously we also mentioned the ultimate damage also constitute as a significant portion, is because her ultimate is also counted as a follow-up, right? So because of this, using follow-up pieces such as Duran, such as Valerius, or using units such as Robin to buff our follow-up attacks is going to be absolutely pivotal to increasing our overall damage output with Yunli, right? So she is not only a follow-up attacker, right, 3TC, she is also considered as a counter attacker at FunTC, which is the only other unit we have right now, Clara, right? So she is both units in one, and this archetype specifically, the FunTC, it is something kind of new to Honkai Starbucks because you do need a little bit more of a proactive gameplay, especially timing when to use Yunli's ultimate, right? So one thing to note with Yunli's counter is that every single time she gets hit, inclusive of the talent as well as the fact that you do get 10 energy from getting hit, she will get at least 30 energy every single time you get hit, which is 1/4 of ultimate. And if you want to give her an energy regeneration rope, she can go up even higher. But to be fair, I personally prefer attack percentage rope, right? So that's going to be that. Now 80% of the damage output, like I mentioned just now at the start, is going to be coming from her ultimate damage, right? And combining both of these together, because her ultimate does constitute as both a ultimate as well as a follow-up attack damage, right? So TLDR, you want to use Yunli's ultimate as frequently as possible to get the absolute highest damage uptime. And the more often she gets hit, and that means the more energy regenerates, and the more energy she generates, that means the more damage she's going to be dealing. So pretty much one of the most definitive way to increase Yunli's quote-unquote damage output, not from a damage per screenshot perspective, but more from the in-battle practicality, is gonna be increasing the chances of Yunli getting hit. Because like I mentioned, every single time Yunli gets hit, that's 30 energy, right? So the more you let Yunli get hit, the more energy is going to be generated, right? So very, very important to increase Yunli's taunt value. And from this, we pretty much only have 3 means as of this current moment. Number 1 is going to be Link's skill, number 2 is going to be March skill, and number 3 is going to be our signature icon. These are the pretty much only 3 means as of now that can increase Yunli's taunt value. And all these 3 in the wording is quoted as greatly increased taunt value, which is directly translated into a 500% taunt value. Now, how exactly does this taunt value? I've also mentioned this in my previous video in the early access, but just to kind of give you guys another visual representation, is that as of right now, if we were to run Yunli with 2 harmony units and 1 abundance, the percentage of Yunli getting hit is roughly around 30%. But with this 500% increased taunt value, this goes up to 70% chance of getting hit, which is more than doubling the percentage of Yunli getting hit, right? So very, very important. So this is going to be another table. Beforehand, the chance of getting hit is 29.41. After a 500% taunt value increase, this goes up to 7.43. But if you were to add another 500% taunt value increase, this only goes up to 82.09, which is very clear to see that if you give Yunli her first 500% taunt value increase, either from Link's March 7 or her signature icon, it is a very, very big increase in overall damage output, because the chance of Yunli getting hit is very high. So this is going to be the overall quote-unquote damage output, right? In a theoretical situation, it is a 76% damage output, assuming that Yunli gets hit 71% more frequently. If it's going to be another 500% taunt value, which is total 1000% taunt value, this only goes up by 11%, because the value for this taunt value increase, it drastically falls off the more you stack, right? So take that into consideration. So basically, the more taunt value you give her, the less benefits taunt value increases, right? So the most important part for Yunli is giving her this first 500% taunt value increase. The second 500%, honestly, if you already have signature icon or if you already have links, you don't really need the second one as much, right? So that's gonna be that. But of course, in reality, this might not be the case, especially when compared to a theoretical situation, because it's gonna be factoring into 2 different things, right? The first thing is, for example, if you have an energy regeneration teammate such as Ting Yun, then the reliance on Yunli getting hit is not going to be as much, right? Since she does get, for example, Ting Yun gives her 60 energy, Poke's ultimate gives her 48 energy, so it kind of reduces the need for Yunli to get hit, since her ultimate can always be more or less up there, right? Another factor that can affect taunt value's damage increase is gonna be from the number of enemies hitting Yunli. So for example, a mode like Pure Fission, where Yunli is up against 5 different mobs, and if every single one of them after casting her ultimate was to hit Yunli, this pretty much gives her instantly 150 energy, which means that she can instantly cast her out up pretty much instantly, right? So this will allow this 500% taunt value increase to go up to a 125% final damage increase, because the number of enemies hitting Yunli is a lot higher, right? So this also will be depending on the scenarios that you are using Yunli. One more thing to mention is that AoE abilities that hit Yunli will also trigger her talent as well as a follow-up attack. So this kind of reduces the significance of taunt value, because as of right now, we do have quite a lot of enemies that are already having AoE damage, such as Argenti, the current new member of Chaos 12, right, the 3 new bosses. So if the enemy is already dealing damage to all of your entire party, then having this taunt value or not wouldn't change that much, right? So as the number of AoE damage increase and the number of energy regeneration increase for Yunli as well as her enemies, then the taunt value increase benefit will slowly drop down to 0% benefit, right? Because as long as she gets enough energy to cast out almost every single turn, and if she gets hit every single turn, then this taunt value doesn't really change that much, right? So that's gonna be that. Okay, now after understanding how Yunli's taunt value, her ultimate, her talents, and follow-up work, one thing to also consider is that this is going to be very, very adaptive depending on the environment that Yunli is in. The more enemies Yunli face, the better her performance is going to be. But the less enemies they face, or the less frequent the enemies attack Yunli, then the lower her performance is going to be, right? Another thing to mention is, especially if you don't have an E6 Yunli, if the enemies also move very slowly or just don't attack as frequently, then Yunli's damage output is also going to unfortunately go down, right? So take that into consideration. So TLDR, the very first 500 taunt value increase is a very drastic improvement for Yunli's overall damage. The second 500% taunt value increase is a very, very minor improvement, right? Which is really, really not that impactful, right? Cool. Okay, now moving on to Yunli's light cone as Relic recommendations. Pretty much lies in tandem with what we've discovered in the early access review. Signature Light Cone is a very, very important signature light cone for Yunli because it does give us the 500% taunt value increase, which not only allows us to freeze up the slot from links to use units like Huan Huan, it also allows us to deal more damage with our entire team, right? So if you were to take a look into our substitutes, right? So now we have numbers here from 4 of an Aeon at full stacks, no stacks on average, Clara Signature Light Cone, Imbibitor Lunar Signature Light Cone as well as Under the Blue Sky. The overall differences, you can see that if we don't consider taunt value increase, is roughly 11-ish%, 10%-ish better than the alternatives. But if we were to factor in this 500% taunt value increase, you can see that the difference definitely goes up by a lot more, right? By almost 20% on average for every other signature light cone, right? So the taunt value increase is definitely very, very important. Also opening up the slot to build in Huo Huo, right? So Signature Light Cone, very, very good for Yunli. And if you were to not get Yunli Signature Light Cone, you're pretty much tied to using links with Yunli in order to enjoy the 500% taunt value increase, which can limit your team building restrictive capabilities, right? So take that into consideration. No matter what angle you're going to be taking a look at it, Signature Light Cone for Yunli is going to be very, very important, and it is one of the best bang for buck light cones, especially if you are going to be considering using Yunli, because we don't really have any other destruction light cones as of now that can increase our taunt value, right? So very, very important. For other substitute, is pretty much going to be 4 of an Aeon as well as Clara Signature Light Cone. 4 of an Aeon is going to be the best alternative. Imbibitor Lunar Signature Light Cone is really not too bad because you can improve your basic attack, you can improve your energy regeneration as well as your attack percentage, so it's not too bad, as well as the crit rate, right? But keep into consideration that you are forced to use your basic attack. So overall, the main benefit of this is it kind of gives you a little bit more of a skill point positivity because it kind of maintains your energy regeneration rate, right? So you basically can use Imbibitor Lunar Light Cone if you already have him, right? Another thing to note is that if you are going to be using Imbibitor Lunar Light Cone, is that on full auto, Yunli will pretty much never use a basic attack. She will always use a skill, which means the Imbibitor Lunar Light Cone is kind of useless, right? So take that into consideration. Every other light cone like Blade Signature Light Cone, Jing Liu's, all of these light cones, they are basically a worse version compared to 4 of an Aeon, so you guys don't have to consider them in terms of substitute, right? Cool. Okay, when it comes to the relic recommendations, Wind Stolen Varese is going to be the absolute best in slot, and then the 4-piece follow-up Grand Duke is going to be the other alternative, right? Between both of them, the damage difference is honestly not too big. It's almost around the same, but this is assuming that you are triggering Yunli Intuit Cow every single time you are using the 4-piece Grand Duke. Intuit Cow is the enhanced version of Yunli's ultimate, because with Intuit Cow, the additional instances will count as providing our follow-up attack buff as a stack, which means because we deal 14 different instances of damage, it will give us a 41% attack buff if we are going to be using Grand Duke 4-piece. However, if we are not using Intuit Cow and only using Intuit Slash, then this attack buff drastically decreases, which makes 4-piece Grand Duke a lot worse for Yunli, right? So for players that can utilize Yunli's Intuit Cow to its full potential, then there's not too much difference. But if you just want to get it over and done with without worrying about anything else or like piloting issues, then 4-piece Wind Valerius is going to be best in slot, right? Basically a 2% difference if they are around the absolute highest potential. Okay, cool. Of course, when you're farming for relics, it also depends on the secondary relics that you're farming for, right? So if you're farming for Grand Duke and you do get a prisoner set, it can improve your DOT team. Or if you're building for Firefly Super Break, then the Iron Cavalry is going to be best in slot, right? So it also kind of depends, because we do want to consider stamina efficiency if you want to get the best experience in playing honkaistarrail. Right, so if you're playing DOT, that's going to be that, and Super Break is going to be that, right? Cool. For our plan of 2-piece for Yunli, unfortunately, it's going to be pretty restrictive. It's just going to be Duran as well as Sao Soto, right? There's pretty much no other situations where you run anything else. Duran is around 5% better than Sao Soto, so it's pretty significant difference. It's 5% final damage increase. Also, you want to consider the fact that Sao Soto's Bellabok 2-piece is almost pretty much completely useless nowadays. You might want to consider farming Duran instead, and this is pretty much the best in slot, right? So always farm this. Cool. For main stats and subsets, pretty straightforward as a classic DPS, right? Crit damage shares, attack percentage boost, physical damage sphere, as well as attack percentage rope, or you can also run energy regeneration rope on Yunli, right? So that's gonna be that. For our body, most of the time you do want to run critical rate body because we do get a 100% critical damage buff for Yunli's ultimate, and also we don't have any crit rate tracers, especially if you're not getting other other sources from any other light cones, right? So getting crit rate body is going to be better 99% of the time. For our feat, we are always going to be running attack percentage because running speed boots on Yunli's only objective is to allow her to go faster, which means that we can cast a skill more frequently and get more ultimates because of the energy. But because Yunli gets so much energy from a talent when you get hit, whether or not we go fast with Yunli doesn't matter at all. In fact, if we were to go slower, it also kind of benefits Yunli more because that means that the buffs applied for Yunli can have a higher coverage, similar to how, like, you know, slow Rame has a higher coverage on her buffs, right? So slower Yunli is pretty much always good to go, and not to mention every single time you counter, you do more damage, right? So attack percentage boost is definitely going to be the best as well. Physical damage sphere between attack percentage is roughly a 2% difference, so nothing too crazy. Just depends on which subset you get better. Yep, that's pretty much it. And then energy regeneration, if you are gonna, it kind of depends on your team. So if you are going to be having a team with a lot of attack buffers such as Ting Yun and Robin, which you get a lot of attack percentage buffs, you can consider running energy regeneration rope. And if you, who knows, if you get one turn ultimate earlier because of this energy regeneration, then that could be very beneficial, right? So roughly between 0 to 7% difference. And also on average, it kind of stabilizes your damage output because it reduces the reliance on Yunli getting hit that often. If you don't get hit enough and you just miss that little bit of energy to cast the ultimate, it can be very annoying, right? Because you do really need Yunli to cast the ultimate to get it going. So it kind of stabilizes the damage. Aside from that, the difference between ER rope and attack percentage rope is really small, so can just kind of run whichever has the better substats. Okay, substats, very straightforward. Double crit and attack percentage, not too much to talk about there. Speed, really not that great, but if you get it, it's not too bad as well, right? So that's gonna be that. Now moving on into our team compositions, in under the assumption of 8 SSRs or 8 5-stars or 8 S rank agents or 8 whatever, right? So if you have a 8 5-star units, best in slot Yunli team is probably gonna be something like this: Yunli, Robin, Topaz with Huan / Adventure. If you don't have some of these two units, feel free to consider an alternative such as Ting Yun or Gallagher / Lynx, right? Both Gallagher and Lynx, they can kind of work. Lynx is going to be a lot more preferred if you do not have Yunli's signature light cone, right? And Ting Yun provides energy. But I think the fundamental principle is that Robin is extremely beneficial for Yunli. Getting the extra turns from Robin, not just for Yunli but for her entire teammate, can drastically improve the overall rotations for Yunli. And also Robin's ultimate damage buff is just a very good source of damage for Yunli's total damage output, right? So that's gonna be that, right? So these two are gonna be the most important. And if you do have a E1 Robin, this damage just pretty much flies off a cliff, right? So very good. If you do not have Robin, feel free to run any of the other alternatives. Sparkle, Rame, or even Topaz, they all be pretty decent, right? It's just that compared to Robin, it's gonna be slightly worse, right? Take that into consideration. For the sustain slot, if you do not have Signature Light Cone, run Lynx. And if you do have Signature Light Cone, then it doesn't really matter that much, right? So not too much to say over here. If you have Signature Light Cone, boom. If you do have Yunli's Signature Light Cone, then the pretty much best in slot sustain for Yunli is going to be Huan, because our max energy regeneration is 48. Very good. Cleanse, heals, all that. She's basically her yep, not much to be said. If you are going to be using Aventurine as our limited 5-star sustain, you also give Yunli a little bit more of a crit damage increase from the ultimate, and this team works exceedingly well. This follow-up team comp with Robin, Aventurine, Topaz, and Yunli, it pretty much one of, if not the current highest performing teams as of right now, right? So very good. One potential issue is that Aventurine shield might be a little bit thin, especially if you're building a DPS Aventurine. But then again, Yunli does have the health regeneration when you use a skill, so the sustained pressure on Yunli might not be that bad, right? Another thing to consider is that if you are going to be using Aventurine, it's going to be a preservation unit. So if the boss is single target and you didn't have taunt, it might reduce the odds of Yunli getting hit, right? So also take that into consideration. Oh yeah, remember to not bring on value increase light cones, such as Japar's light cone or Landau choice, because that's gonna be really bad, right? Because really want Yunli to be the one getting hit. Finally, between Luocha and Fu Xuan, they're pretty much the not as strong alternatives, but you can definitely still use them with your Yunli team. So one more additional tip is that for your 4-star sustains or even 5-star sustains, especially abundance, you can run this light cone called Quick Pro Quo, which gives us quite a bit of energy, and it does help us with our overall Yunli's rotations, especially when we are lacking energy. Because consider the fact that Quick Pro Quo only activates when your unit is less than 50% max energy. And like I mentioned, Yunli's max energy is 240, which means that the odds of us triggering Quick Pro Quo for Yunli is actually quite high, right? So very good. And for units like Gallagher, he does have action value increase, which means that you can go a lot more frequently and give us a lot more energy, right? Cool. So overall to the team composition damage output, you can see that for our E0S1 Yunli with a E6S5 Tingyun, in terms of a sustained perspective, Robin does provide Yunli the highest amount of total damage increase at 193.2% compared to Tingyun, Sparkle, and finally Runmei. Right? Runmei does provide the lowest benefit for Yunli, which is quite, you know, finally there's a team that Runmei doesn't really work perfectly with, which is honestly fine because Runmei is really busy as it is, right? So TLDR, this team, Robin, Tingyun, Yunli, and Eidolons the sustain is pretty much going to be the most accessible, best, more or less free-to-play friendly team that you can provide for Yunli. Now, moving on to our Eidolon analysis for Yunli. Eidolon 1, like I mentioned previously, this Eidolon does provide one of the highest damage increase at a whopping 31.4% final damage increase, which is extremely high for a single Eidolon. So take that into consideration. Eidolon 2 at roughly 16% final damage increase. Keep in mind that this can go higher or lower depending on how much defense rate you have. But with Yunli's team composition, a lot of our units does not have access to defense period. Like we're not running Pella, we're not running E1 Runmei, so it can be quite difficult to stack on defense penetration for Yunli. And E4 pretty much changes nothing, it's just effect rest. And then finally, getting her E6 pretty much doubles her E0 damage at 230%, which is a whopping almost 60% final damage increase. So E6 is definitely going to be extremely strong, right? E1, main reason why it goes up by so high, especially because of the single target, is because of the additional instance of damage, because it does count as toughness breaking and it is a strict multiplier damage increase, which is one of the highest damage increase you can get, right? So in consideration. E6, just to touch about it a little bit more, not only do we get the physical rest pen as well as the damage increase, E6 also allows Yunli to utilize Intuit Cow a lot more frequently, especially against bosses that do not have multi-hit abilities. So units such as this Prowler, right, where the Syrian Prowler, where you charge up the hit, he doesn't hit Yunli. But if you do have the E6, it will still trigger Yunli's Intuit Cow, which is going to be very good, especially in the future. We have a lot of different units that have a lot of this kind of like charging abilities, such as a Malefic Ape, the Monkey, or the DOT guy, the Skull guy, which doesn't even attack you. Using Yunli's E6 can trigger into a cow, which can drastically increase damage output compared to a Yunli without this special ability, right? But keep in mind, this is only for enemy units. If you are going to be using this during your ally's turn, then it would not trigger, right? So take that into consideration. Alright, so in summary, for Yunli as a 2.0 DPS, her overall damage output actually does not fall behind that much compared to Acheron as well as Firefly. And her overall abilities, especially against contents like Pure Fission or units with a lot of times your unit can get hit very frequently, her utility definitely goes up by quite a bit, right? She can pretty much be used in a lot of different scenarios. Memory of Chaos, Pure Fission, Apocalyptic Shadows. If you want to clear a stage, Yunli can definitely clear a stage for you as of the current 2.0 DPS. And not to mention, she does have inherently higher sustain, higher durability compared to other DPS units because she's a self-heal and she's a destruction class unit. So take that into consideration. And for a brand new player that just started playing Honkai Starbucks today, getting Yunli is definitely going to be completely fine. She can just pretty much clear all 3 endgame contents of now, so a very worthy investment for a new player, right? But on the other hand, if you already have a lot of the previous DPS units such as Acheron, Firefly, or even Boothill, then Yunli doesn't change everything. She is not a DPS that revolutionizes our current landscape, such as Firefly, Super Break, or when Acheron was first released, right? So if you already own previous units, then Yunli's inherent value as a DPS, it does go down by quite a bit, especially if you consider the fact that you can already clear the content that we have, right? So until we get a content or a day when we introduce this 3 different teams for endgame content, then if we have these 2, then it's going to be completely fine, right? So take that into consideration. If you're going to be using your 1.0 DPS, such as Scylla and Jingliu, you might want to consider Yunli, which is our 2.0 DPS, right? If whether that's going to be true or not, I'm going to be leaving it up to you guys. No comments, stay neutral, right? Cool. Putting recommendations, if you have Huo, slap on a Signature Icon, Yunli is going to be absolutely good to go, especially for the Signature Icon. If you don't have Huo, you can just bring on links, then don't really need Yunli's Signature Litecoin by that much. And with that, we've come to the end of today's content. Let me know what you guys say in the comments below. The word of the day is going to be NOM. N-O-M. Insane. Join the Discord, join YouTube, join Twitch. Looking forward to hearing what you guys think about Yunli. All the best for your Yunli pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Okay.